Okay, so let's go over the vocabulary. The first word is live, as in to live. To live means to be alive, to be in the process of being alive. Now be careful with live because it can also be pronounced in another way. You can pronounce this live, but that has a different meaning. If you say live, that is an adjective, right? So live here, this live is a verb, right? To live. I want to live a long time. But live as an adjective, we can say it is a live concert, right? That means that people are playing. It's not recorded music. People are actually playing the music. You can see the people. It's live music, live concert. But live, okay? So be careful. Live, live, okay? In this case, live. Live means to be alive. Next word is to grow. Things that live grow. They grow during their lives, right? They become bigger or taller over a period of time. You are growing right now, right? You can't see it, right? To grow usually means it takes a long time, right? It takes many months, maybe years for you to notice a change as you grow. But some animals grow very quickly, right? Like pets, dogs and cats, they grow very quickly. It's still hard to see. You don't see it happening right now, but over weeks or months, very quickly they change, they grow. They become bigger or taller. Our next word is to change. To change means to become different. That's a good picture, right? You've all seen an egg, right? Sometimes you eat eggs for breakfast, right? Well, those are not eggs that will become chickens, don't worry. But an egg that is able to become a chicken will hatch after a while, right? The egg will change. It'll break open and a little chick will come out of it. That's a big change, right? To become different. You also change, right? When you were a baby, now you were a child or a teenager, you changed, right? And you will continue to change through your life. We all do. Okay. Reproduce. 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 Reproduce means to make more living things of the same kind. All living things are able to reproduce. That means that they can make more living things that look like them. When you get older, you might get married and have children. That means you will reproduce, right? When your dog gets older, it can meet another dog, become a parent, and they will have children, right? Plants, when they get older, they send out seeds or pollen and they will reproduce and more plants will grow. So to make more living things of the same kind, that's to reproduce. Next word is a sad word, die. To no longer be alive. Here we have a sad picture of a bird, probably an old bird who became too old and then died. All living things become old and die. It's part of life. The thing is, enjoy your life while you're alive, while you are living, right? To enjoy your life and be good to other people. That's the important thing. Okay, our next word is move. To move. To move means to go from place A to place B, right? Something is at place A and it moves over to place B. Now here we have a picture of a snail. Snails are famous for moving very slowly. Somebody might say, oh, you move like a snail. Means you move very slowly. And probably not a good idea, especially if you're going to school. Okay, so actually we have a video of a snail moving. And you can see, I'll start the video here, you can see, okay, the snail is moving, but it's taking a long time, right? Very slow. In the background, you saw the cars going by very quickly. Cars move fast. Be careful. Snails move really slow. This snail's very slow. Okay, we don't have time to watch him move. It would take a long time to see him move from one side to the other. We don't have time. Okay, so next we have breathe. Breathe. Okay, we have the E at the end. That's important. I will explain soon. But to breathe means to take air into the body. Actually, you take it into your lungs, right? And then you send it out again. All living things breathe. Now, animals and plants have different ways to breathe. But for animals, right, we breathe in the air goes into our lungs, we take the oxygen out and it goes into our blood, and this gives us energy. We need the oxygen to live. So we breathe in the air. We don't need all of the air, just a little part of it is oxygen, but we take that oxygen and we breathe out the air that we don't need, or the gas that is coming out of our body. So it's important to think about breathe in, breathe out. So we can also say that. You breathe in and you breathe out. Okay? Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. And we do it all the time. We don't even think about it because it's a natural part of living. Now, I said it's important, the E at the end. Now, there's a very similar word. It's spelled this way, and this is different. So be careful. Breath. Breathe is a verb. It's the action, right? I showed you. That's to breathe. Breath is a noun. Okay, so be careful. Don't get those two words confused. We can say, take a breath. That is a breath. Breathe in and breathe out. That is one breath. Okay? So when you talk about a breath as a noun, it's no E and we pronounce it breath. But if you're talking about the action, that's a verb, we put an E on the end and we pronounce it breathe. Okay? So breath, breathe. Be careful, don't get them mixed up. Okay, good. Okay, next, we have a video. Now, fish can breathe. You think, how can fish breathe? They're underwater. Where do they get the air? Well, it's interesting because even in water, there is gas. Water is hydrogen and oxygen. And fish are designed to be able to get the gas, the oxygen that they need through their gills, right? They don't breathe in through their mouth. They have gills on the side of their bodies, and they are able to take in the gas that they need. Now, if we can see, we can see the little fish moving around. It's hard to see their gills. You can see their mouths moving, but they're not really breathing through their mouth. They're breathing through their gills. Let me write that for you. Gills. And I put S because fish have two gills on either side, right? And they're kind of their neck. And they kind of open up and close as they're swimming. And that's where the water passes through and they can catch the air or the oxygen that they need through their gills. So fish obviously are much different than mammals because they breathe differently and they can breathe underwater. Mammals can't breathe underwater. Whales and dolphins are mammals, but they have to come up and they have a hole on the back of their head that opens up and they take in the air and they breathe through that hole. So mammals and whales are not really fish, they're mammals, but true fish have gills. Okay, interesting. Next we have oxygen, and I said that word before. Oxygen, oxygen, or oxygen. If you say it quickly, sounds like oxygen. Oxygen. Oxygen is very important. Obviously, I just said when we breathe in, we need the oxygen in the air. The air around us, actually, this is kind of maybe a bigger lesson, nitrogen and oxygen. The air right now around me and around you is 21%, only 21% oxygen. The rest, what is that? That's 79% nitrogen, right? So we don't need nitrogen. Our bodies don't use nitrogen. Nitrogen it's like nothing to our body. We don't react to nitrogen, but we do react with oxygen, and we need oxygen to live. Oxygen goes into our blood. It helps us do many of the functions that our cells need to be able to do what they do. And there's so many different cells that do have different tasks in our body, and that helps us to live. So oxygen is a gas, right? It's a gas that living things need. We need it, fish need it, many different living things need oxygen. And mostly the air is 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. Yes, there are other gases, but they're very small. They're not really measurable in any situation, any typical situation. Okay, that we, in the outside. Okay, good. So oxygen is very important for us and most living things. Next, we have healthy. Healthy means to be strong and well. I hope you are healthy and your parents are very interested, or they're very worried, hopefully not too worried, that you stay healthy. And you should eat well, eat good things, eat vegetables, eat, depending on, meat is good. Vegetables, of course, are very important. Make sure you eat a balanced diet so to stay healthy. But that's not it. You also need to exercise. This boy is exercising because you need to give your muscles the practice or the chance to grow strong. And you want to stay healthy. And not just eating and exercise, you also need sleep. So make sure you get enough sleep. Put your phone away. Don't play video games too long. Get enough sleep at night. All of these things help you remain healthy. And you want to be healthy all your life. Of course, when you're young, you're very strong and healthy. As you get older, you have to work harder to stay healthy. Okay, good. Okay.
American Textbook Reading. Science, Book 3. Lesson 1. Living and non-living things. Live. To be alive. Grow. To become bigger or taller over a period of time. Change. To become different. Reproduce. To make more living things of the same kind. Die. To no longer be alive. Move. To go from one place to another. Breathe. To take air into the body and send it out again. Oxygen. A gas that living things need. Healthy. Strong and well.
Our first word is petal. Petal is a very important part of the plant. The petal is the beautiful part of the plant, right? They are the thin, colorful parts of a flower, right? So many plants have flowers, or they have flowers usually in the springtime, right? Even trees, right? They will have these little green buds, and then the green buds will open, and they'll be blue, or they'll be red or white. And they're very thin. They're like leaves almost, but they're thin, and they feel almost like plastic or wax. And they're very colorful. So they are thin, colorful parts of a flower. Thin, colorful parts of a flower on many types of plants. Next, we have a thorn. Ouch, right? Be careful. A thorn is a sharp, pointed part of a plant. It's a good picture of thorns. Do you like roses? Many roses, when you pick, be careful picking or touching a rose bush because they have many thorns. So you have to be very careful. If you want to give your mom or your girlfriend a rose, be careful holding the rose, right? Because if the thorn pricks your skin, it actually goes into your skin and ouch, right? It may hurt you and you have blood, right? So that's a thorn, sharp, pointed part of a plant. Be careful around some plants that have thorns. Okay. Next, we have vine. Now, vines are cool plants because, they start off low, but as they grow, they send out little, we'll see the word later, they're called tendrils, but they send out little parts of the plant that grow up a building or a wall. And it's kind of cool because the picture shows it well. You see, the vine sends out all these little branches, and they climb up, or they climb along a wall, they climb over a building. Many famous colleges in America are called Ivy League colleges because they're so old. The buildings are very old, and the vines that grew on the bottom, they grew along the side of the building. So you don't see the building, you just see the vine. So the buildings are covered with the vines. Very interesting. Vine. Okay, next. Attract. Attract is to cause someone or something to move towards you. To attract is, to make someone like you, or something makes other people like it, or not just people, but it could be animals, or in this case, insects, right? So if you think about it, a flower has many beautiful petals, right? So is it the beautiful, colorful petals that attract bees? No, it's the smell of the center of the flower. The bees smell that and they're attracted to it. Now, of course, scientists are saying that sometimes the patterns on the petal also attract bees, so it also helps bees. But basically, they're saying, hey, bees, come here. We've got some nice pollen for you. So they're attracting bees to the flower, right? If you have an ice cream truck come through your neighborhood, right? You hear the music attracts all the kids to come and get ice cream. Yay! Or they hear the bell, ding, 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 the little musical bells that play when the ice cream truck comes through the neighborhood. So to attract means to make people or to cause people to say, oh, great, and they get excited and they want to go see something, or they want to go get something, or they come towards that thing that is attracting them. Okay, interesting word. Next, support. Support is important, right? Support is when you hold something in place or you help something stand up. Let's say something is not very strong. It will fall over if you don't support it. You put something here, maybe a piece of wood or a wall to help it stand up. Buildings, of course, have metal pieces to help support the building and a good foundation, right? Older people might use a stick to support them as they walk along the trail when they go hiking, right? So support is something that helps hold another thing in place or helps hold another thing upright. That's support. And of course, we can also talk about supporting other people. Sometimes people get sad or they feel they're not They need some help. So you can support other people. You can cheer them up. You're helping them get back on their feet. Good job. Support. Okay. Spread, right? Before I talked about vines, right? They grow up and around. They don't just grow up the building, they grow along the sides of the building too. So to spread means to cover a larger and larger area over time. They spread out, right? Spread out is usually a common combination of words, to spread or to spread out. Vines spread over the building, right? So they spread out over a larger and larger area over time, to spread. Okay, good. Dandelion. Now, everybody knows what a dandelion is. You probably see them growing everywhere. Actually, my dad hated dandelions because dandelions are actually weeds. They're a wild plant. They have yellow flowers, but like, my dad and many other people, they say they have no use and they grow everywhere. They grow where you don't want them to grow. They will grow in the cracks in a sidewalk. My dad was like, oh, we got to get rid of the dandelions. Or if he's trying to have, he has grass in front of his house. He doesn't like dandelions because they'll take over and they'll kill all the grass. So dandelions are a wild plant. They're a very tough plant. Many people think of them as weeds. Weeds is an unwanted plant. So dandelion. Although dandelions are cool because you can pick them and you can blow and all the seeds go away. So they're kind of cool too. Okay, dandelion. Cactus. Now, actually, cactus, I have also experience with cactus. I used to live in Arizona, which is in the southwest part of America. We had cactus like this in our backyard. They're called saguaro. Ooh, that's a difficult word. Don't worry, it's a type of cactus. There are really tall cactus and there are small cactuses. Some people say cactuses, some people say cacti. Cacti is Latin, but a lot of people just say cactuses. It's okay. So there are big cactuses and there are small cactuses. There's all different kinds of cactuses. But cactus have one thing in common. All kinds of cactuses, they all have one thing in common. Do you see on the picture, do you see those little things coming off the cactus? Those are thorns. Remember we talked about thorns. They're sharp parts of a plant. They're like needles. And on a cactus, oh my gosh, they have a lot of these thorns all over them, right? A plant covered in thorns, and they usually grow in the desert, like in Arizona, where we used to live. And so you have to be careful around the cactus because those thorns will stick you. And even if you're walking in jeans, right? They can even go through your jeans. So you have to be careful around cacti or cactuses. Okay, it's a cactus. Okay, our last word. Remember I talked about vines. They grow, right? As vines grow, they send out branches, but you can also call them tendrils. Tendril is a part of a plant that can grab onto things. And if you look at the picture, you see the little curly things at the ends of the leaves on this branch. It looks like kind of an ivy, I don't know, maybe a palm branch. But those have little hooks. And they can reach out and they can grab onto things. And that's how a vine grows up a building. They have little tendrils and little hooks, and they go into the concrete or the brick wall, and they kind of hold onto it. And then, so that supports it so it can grow even more and spread out over a larger area. So tendril, we can see tendril is important, but we also can see how it supports a plant and also how it can spread out over other areas. So good word, we can use the other words we just studied to help explain what a tendril is. Part of a plant that can grab onto things. Don't worry, it won't grab onto you. It's not that fast. It takes a long time. So, don't worry. Okay, that wraps up our vocabulary section. Let's move on.
Lesson 2. Plant parts. Petal. One of the thin, colorful parts of a flower. Thorn. A sharp, pointed part of a plant. Vine. A plant that climbs up or over things. Attract. To cause someone or something to move towards another thing. Support. To hold something in place. Spread. To cover a larger and larger area over time. Dandelion. A wild plant with yellow flowers. Cactus. A plant covered in thorns that grows in deserts. Tendril. The part of a plant that can grab onto things.
Okay, our first word is germinate. Whew, it's a big word. Germinate. 3 syllables. Germinate. Germinate means to start growing for a seed. When a seed is put into the ground, it'll start growing. I wonder what that looks like. Well, we have a picture here. You see the seed, it starts growing, but we also have a video. Let's take a look. As we can see, you can see the plants beginning to grow. Some of them, it seems like they're popping out of the ground. Of course, it's a video that's taken over a very long time, and we only see it, a moment at a time. So it seems like some of the plants are popping out of the ground. But remember, this video is over a very long time, and it was made very quick. But you can see how plants, they take a long time, but they slowly grow out of the ground and they make new green shoots. Okay. So our next word is mature, and this is a verb in this case. It can also be an adjective, but in this case it's a verb. To mature. To mature means to become fully grown. To become fully grown, to mature. So when a plant matures, it becomes fully grown. Now we can also, like I said, use that as an adjective. Adjective, of course, the abbreviation for adjective is that. And you can say, this is a mature tree. A mature tree. I'm sorry, cross my T. A mature tree. And that means that the tree is fully grown, that the tree is fully grown. Okay, so to mature, to become fully grown, it's also an adjective, a mature tree. Okay, next word is parent. Now, that's connected to the word we just studied, right? A mature tree is probably a parent tree. A parent is the father or mother of an animal, a plant, or a person. Now, plants don't really have mother and father like we think of in the animal kingdom, right? In the animal kingdom, a father is a male, a mother is a female, and they are the parents of their offspring, their children, and that is a parent. So the father and mother of an animal, a plant, or person. But you can also say, of course, for a tree, in this case, this tree made the smaller tree grow, okay? So it is the parent of other trees in the neighborhood. Okay, so a parent. Next we have an adult. Wow, all these words are very similar. Mature, parent, adult. Right? So adult is a fully grown animal or plant. And remember, an adult is a mature animal or plant. So an adult is an animal or plant that is fully matured. Okay. Young. Now, the opposite of mature, of parent, of adult is a young person or a young plant. Of course, baby is another way to say that, baby or child. So in this case, we have young. And interesting use of the word young here. It says young are the babies of an animal. So in this case, young is a noun, and we would probably say the young, right? The young of something. So those pups are the young of my dog. For example, those puppies are the babies of my dog. My dog had babies, and those are the young of my dog. So in this case, it's a little bit more of a scientific use. We don't usually use it in that way in general conversation. But it's it's okay. It's still common, but it's more of a scientific word or usage in this case. The young. Where is the young of a certain animal or plant, right? So the babies of an animal are the young. But of course, we also use young. We normally say young as an adjective, right? She is a young child. Or, wow, of course, babies are young. That's what it means to be a baby, is to be young. Okay, so when I was young is a common saying. So it's an interesting word here, which is stage. Now, we've been talking about young and then adult or parent, but a young person or thing or animal or plant doesn't suddenly become an adult, right? There are different stages in that development. We have a good picture here of different stages. A stage is one part of a process. A process is how something happens. So how does a baby become an adult? Well, it goes through different stages, right? In this case, the plant is just a very young plant. We call it a seedling. It goes through different stages to become an adult plant. Think about the stages for you and I, right? We can say when we're born, right, we are a baby, right? But then we get a little bit older. Then we enter the next stage would be child, right? That's the next stage, child. The next stage, after a child gets older, the child becomes what? A teenager. Teenager. Okay, then after the teenager becomes older, right? What happens after the teenager becomes older? They become what? They become an adult, right? So these are different stages for humans and most animals, right? All animals. First, you're born as a baby, then you become a child, the next stage, then a teenager is the next stage, an adult is the next stage. So there are many different stages that living organisms, people, or animals and plants go through during their life. And that's just part of life. Okay, so interesting, stage. Okay, next one. Female. As I said before, we talked about parent, right? And I said father or mother. Now, a female is a mother, right? Mother is a female, and they belong to the sex that can produce a baby or an egg. So, females, in every species, every animal has male and female. The female is the one or the ones who can give birth to a baby. They produce eggs, and those eggs can grow into babies. Men don't have eggs, right? Men don't give birth to offspring. Only females do. So that's the female side, okay? Give birth. I just said give birth. Females give birth to young. Men do not give birth to young babies. Women, females, give birth to babies and give birth for a female animal to produce a baby from her body. all animals are born this way. The female who becomes the mother, right? She has an egg inside of her. It grows, it develops into a baby. The baby's inside of her. It has to get out. So when it's ready, not before, but when it's ready, hopefully not before, the baby will come out of the body of the female, and there's a new baby. Whether it's a baby boy or a baby girl or a baby puppy or a baby cow, that's how animals are born. Their mothers give birth to babies. Okay. Next we have tadpole. Probably if you like to play outdoors, I don't know about many kids these days, but if you like to play outdoors, you probably see frogs. And if you see baby frogs, they look a lot different than adult frogs. Baby frogs look like little tadpoles. Go out into the, if there's a mountain, trees, forest near where you live, after it rains, go out and look in the puddle of the water. Sometimes you see these little animals that look like this swimming around. These are called tadpoles, and they are a small creature with a long tail. They have long tails, and the little tail, goes back and forth, and that's how they swim in the water, and it develops into a frog or a toad. And we have a video of many little tadpoles. This is what I'm talking about. Usually, this looks a little bit larger, like a larger body of water. But when I was a kid, right, we could go out, we could see these little puddles of water, and we could see the little tadpoles. Let's look at them swimming around. You see their little tails are going back and forth. And sometimes we would catch the tadpoles, we would bring them home, put them in a jar of water, and we would watch them grow into frogs. And tadpoles are very interesting because they change completely. Well, one thing that happens with tadpoles, you see, is that their tail, right, the little tails that are going like this, they disappear, right? So over here on the left side of the picture, you see a baby frog, right? The tadpole is changing into the frog. It still has a long tail. But as it gets older, the tail will disappear. That means it becomes impossible to see, or it just goes away, right? In this case, the tail just goes away and you can't see it anymore. It happens over a long time, but it's very interesting. So that was something that we did as kids, We would take tadpoles and watch them change into frogs. And of course, the amazing thing is their tails would disappear. So interesting.
Lesson 3. Growth and change. Germinate. To start growing. Mature. To become fully grown. Parent. The father or mother of an animal, a plant, or a person. Adult. A fully grown animal or plant. Young. The babies of an animal. Stage. One part of a process. Female. Belonging to the sex that can produce a baby or an egg. Give birth. For a female animal to produce a baby from her body. Tadpole. A small creature with a long tail which develops into a frog or toad. Disappear. To become impossible to see.
First of all, like I said, the title of the unit is Animals with and Without Backbones. But what is a backbone? A backbone is the line of bones down your back. Now, don't be confused about this. It looks like, oh, backbone is one bone? No. The backbone is many different smaller bones. In us, in human beings, and most other animals, they're little discs. It's like a little disc, and they stack on top of each other. And it's a line of bones, and they're all connected with tissue. But these little bones, it's kind of a difficult word. Let me spell it for you. Vertebrae. So, vertebrae. 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 That's a little more of a difficult word, more of a scientific word, maybe a medical word. Most people just say backbone, but it's not one bone, it's many bones. In fact, in humans, we have 33 of these bones. 33 vertebrae. Wow, that's many bones connected by tissue in our back, from our neck all the way to the bottom of our back. So those are vertebrae. That is the backbone. And of course, many other bones, like your ribs, come out from the backbone. The backbone is very important for us and many animals like us. But not all living things have backbones. We'll see that. Okay, continue. Next, we have covering. Now, here's an animal, insect, that does not have a backbone. Instead, it has a covering. Cover. To cover means to put on top of something. When you get in bed at night, you pull up the cover, right? It covers you. Some animals have a covering. It's a hard covering, right? Tuck, tuck, tuck. A covering is just a layer of something over something else. Like you in your bed, you have a covering, a blanket over you. It covers you. It's a layer of blanket or material, cotton, whatever, over you when you sleep to keep you warm. Insects have a hard covering, tuck, 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 right? That protects them. They don't have a backbone. Okay, next. Shell. A shell is a type of covering. Think about a crab, right? Now don't get hungry, okay? But a shell, the hard outer covering of some animals is a shell, right? You see, crabs are very tough, aren't they? They've got the hard shell on their back. What's another animal with a shell? A snail, right? Snails have shells also. They carry the covering around on their back. Let's take a look at a video of an interesting crab changing its shell. Okay, let's take a look at this. This is what we call a hermit crab, right? He backed into that shell, he put it on his back, and now he's got a new home. Sometimes you can see hermit crabs, hermit, H-E-R-M-I-T, hermit crab. A hermit crab, it grows, but the shell doesn't grow. So when the hermit crab gets too big, he can't fit in his shell anymore. What does he do? He gets out of his shell and finds a new shell. And then he has a new home. Okay, so very interesting. Hermit crabs are very interesting. Sometimes they're cute too, right? Okay. Next word is hop. Hop is a verb, right? And maybe you play some games where you hop. Hop means to jump, but not a long jump, a short jump, like hop, 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 right? If you play hopscotch, right? Hopscotch, that's a game. I'm sure you're familiar with it. In America, I think it has been a long time since I played hopscotch, but usually people will have a diagram like this, right? And they will hop. They'll hop in the first square, then they'll hop in the second square, and they hop and they put both legs here for this one, and they hop both legs here. So this one's kind of like that. Yeah, it's called hopscotch, and it's a game that kids play, and they hop. This little jumps from one position to another. And we can see a video of something hopping. Look at this bird. It's going to hop, right? It's moving around. Now, see how it hops? It doesn't walk, right? It hops, right? It goes from place to place by hopping. Birds don't walk very well. Their bodies aren't built to walk, but they can hop very well. And of course, they can fly very well too. So that is to hop. Okay. Now, birds can also glide, and some other, not just birds, but mammals. This is a bat, okay? And animals with wings can glide. Glide means to fly by floating on the air, right? So, in other words, the bat or the bird doesn't have to beat its wings. It doesn't have to beat or flap. Sometimes you could say flap its wings, right? Beat its wings or flap its wings, that's when it has to give energy to make the wings go back and forth so it can take off. But when they're in the air and they want to go down, it's very easy. They don't have to use any energy. They just turn their wings and they glide down through the air. Very easy, very calm, no energy needed. Okay, so to fly by floating on the air. You can glide too if you get older and you want to hang glide. Hang glide, that's pretty cool. Hang glide. That's where you go out with a sports company, right? And they give you a little, it's like a big kite, and you hold on. You jump off a cliff. You don't fall, but you glide down, and it's really cool. So maybe one day you can try that. That is to glide. Okay, our next word is to protect. Now we saw before covering and shell. Those are hard surfaces. Well, covering doesn't have to be hard, but a shell is a hard surface. Why do crabs have a shell? Because they want to be protected. They want to protect themselves from other animals. Turtles also have a shell on their back because they want to be protected. The shell protects them. It keeps them safe from damage. Other creatures like birds or dogs or wolves or whatever might want to eat the turtle. So the turtle, can stick its head in and its legs and its arms, and it's protected because it's a hard shell. Nothing can get inside the shell. So the turtle is safe. Okay? Our next word is flying squirrel. 2 words, flying squirrel. So it's interesting. Like I said before, not just birds can fly, right? We saw bats. Bats can fly. Squirrels can fly too. Although squirrels don't really flap their wings or beat their wings, squirrels climb up. Using their legs, they'll climb up a tree, right? And they'll climb up really high in a tree. And if they look around, they say, oh, I want to go to that tree. They don't have to climb all the way down and climb back up. No, they just jump off the tree and they spread their legs and they have like a skin covering and they can glide to the next tree. It's like their own hang glider built in to their body. That's pretty cool, huh? So flying squirrel is an animal with a long tail that lives in trees and can glide. Just basically a squirrel. If you go walking in the woods near your house, I'm sure you can see many squirrels, but these are special squirrels. Most squirrels don't have those wings or that covering, but flying squirrels do. They're very interesting animals. Okay. Our next word is a grasshopper. That's an interesting, right? It's one word, but think about it. It's like 2 words put together. 2 words put together. The first word is grass. Now you know grass. Grass is the green plant, the short plant that grows in a lawn, maybe at your school, or when you're walking down the street, you see a nice area of green, right? Little blades of plant. That's grass. You can lay on the grass. It's cool. It's comfortable. It smells good, right? And there's dirt underneath the grass, right? So it's a natural area. So we have grass, and then we have, remember the word we just learned? Hop. To hop, right? But hop is a verb. A person who hops, or a thing that hops, is a hopper. So if you hop, you are a hopper because you hop, right? If you walk, you are a walker. Same idea, right? So ER means, somebody who does something. At a restaurant, someone who waits. Waiter. Okay, good. Okay, so a grasshopper is a thing that hops in the grass, right? If you look in the grass, you might see grasshoppers. They're little insects that look like this. They're green, so it's hard to see them. Smart grasshopper, right? They have long back legs. Look at these legs. Wow, they're so long, right? Those legs can extend like this very quickly, and so the insect, the grasshopper, can jump really high. Imagine if your legs were like that. Wow, you could play basketball really well, and you dunk the basketball, right? That'd be amazing. But maybe it's a good idea that we don't have legs like that, because maybe we could hit our head in buildings, right, in the classroom. So I don't know. Anyway, an insect with long back legs that can jump very high. That is a grasshopper. Okay, so very interesting words for this lesson. I hope you learned some good words there. We're going to use those in the reading coming up next.
Lesson 4. Animals with and without backbones. Backbone. The line of bones down your back. Covering. A layer of something over something else. Shell. The hard outer covering of some animals. Hop. To make small jumps. Glide. To fly by floating on air. Protect. To keep something or someone safe from damage. Flying squirrel. An animal with a long tail that lives in trees and can glide. Grasshopper. An insect with long back legs that can jump very high.
First, we can see hairy. Hairy? Plants? Can plants be hairy? Normally when we think about hair, right, we think about the hair on our heads or the hair on an animal like a dog or a horse, right? But hairy plants? Yes, it's possible that some plants seem to have hair. We'll see that, okay? So hairy means having a lot of hair. But plants, of course, don't have hair, but it may look like they have hair. So we'll see that in a little while. So hairy. Flat. Flat is, you could say, maybe some people probably say boring countryside. Sorry if you live in a flat area. But flat just means that the land is flat. There's no change. It doesn't go down. It doesn't go up. There are no mountains, no valleys. It's just flat. A flat land having no high or curved parts. Well, curved, I guess, would be curved in the land like this. No, it's all flat. So if you live in an area like farmland, many people live in farmland where the farms need to be flat, so it's easy for the farmer to grow plants there. Many states in America are famous for being flat, like Kansas, Nebraska. Now, people in Kansas and Nebraska might get mad at me, but I'm sorry. But, I grew up In mostly western states, there are many mountains. It's not flat. You have huge mountains. So, but there are many parts of the area, country, that are flat. And that's just what it means. No mountains, no valleys, flat. Lose. Lose. I hope you don't experience this, but it's part of life. Usually we lose something. You can't avoid it. Lose means you do not have something any longer, right? If you have something in your hand, like coins or your favorite toy, and it drops out of your hand, maybe you're not paying attention, you lose it somewhere. You're like, oh no, where did it go? I can't find it. I lost it. Right? That means to lose means that you have lost the thing that you had before. It also happens in the environment. In this picture, lose. What does this picture have to do with lose? Well, maybe they're talking about water. Over time, the land has lost the water. So that could be an idea for this picture. Okay. Freeze. In the wintertime, we know this word very well. That's when it becomes so cold that water changes from a liquid to a solid. It becomes hard and solid because the temperature goes below 0 degrees Celsius. That is the temperature at which water turns from liquid to ice, right? And ice is a hard, cold substance, right? It's solid, right? So to freeze, that's basically what it means to freeze. Of course, it's very cold to do that. Of course, in your home, you can find an example of freezing. Just go to your refrigerator and open the freezer side of your refrigerator. Not the refrigerator side, that's just cold. Open the freezer part where it's really cold and you keep ice and your mom keeps the food that's frozen for later. Okay, good. Here we have a video, a video of something freezing. Well, actually, I could say this is melting, really. This is the opposite of freezing. But it's hard to show a video of freezing because, you have to sit there and watch it, and you may not notice the change very quickly. But here we have a picture of many, what do we call these things, by the way? When water drips down and it's so cold that it freezes as it's dripping down. That's an interesting word. We call these things here, we call them icicles. And there's more than one, so we say, I circled two, so icicles is the plural. But icicles, like ice, and ickle. Not a popsicle. Popsicles, those are delicious. But popsicles are frozen fruit drink, right? Instead of drinking the fruit juice, you freeze it, and it becomes a popsicle. Popsicle. You see the similarity in the words. Popsicle is frozen fruit drink. So if you have a grape popsicle or a watermelon popsicle, right? That's frozen watermelon juice, and it's nice to eat on a hot summer day. But that liquid has frozen into these shapes, in this case, icicle. Okay, our next word is conserve. Very important word. Conserve means to save, right? To keep and protect from loss or waste. Same as I said, to save. Save it. Don't waste it. Waste is the opposite of conserve. You don't want to waste clean water. Unfortunately, clean water is rare in some parts of the world. Some people have a hard time getting clean water that they can drink. And we don't want to waste our resources. We want to conserve them. We want to keep them. Just use them when you need them. Don't just waste them because one day they may not be available so easily and it may be difficult to get them. So we should conserve and we should keep and protect the things that are valuable to us. So conserve, save, or to keep. Okay. Environment. Of course, we should protect the environment. People can say conserve the environment, save the environment, keep the environment clean. So the environment is the natural world. It's the world that's around you. Although, that's what many people normally, the traditional old thinking of the environment is the natural world. But environment can also mean an industrial or city, that's also an environment. You can say urban environment, that would be a city environment. So environment isn't just the natural world, although many people, when they think about the environment, they talk about let's save the environment, let's protect the environment, they're talking about the natural world, right? Trees, ponds, lakes, waterfalls in this case. Don't destroy it, don't change it, let's preserve it, let's conserve it. Okay, so environment. Close. Now, be careful about this word because there's two pronunciations, two different meanings, right? In this case, it's close. That means nearby, next to, not far from. But don't get confused because you could also pronounce this word as close, which is a different meaning, completely different meaning. If the door is open, right, you close the door. So it's the same spelling, but different pronunciations. Close or close. In this case, we're talking about close. It's close by, it's nearby, it's next to, not far from. So hopefully your school is close to your house. Maybe you can walk to your school. You don't have to take a long bus ride. If so, then the school is close to your home, right? Your parents' room is close to your room, right? You just walk a few steps and you can get to one or the other. So close, not close. Okay, next. Needle. Be careful with needles. They're very sharp, right? A needle is what maybe your mom uses to sew clothes together, or if there's a rip, sometimes people want to conserve their clothing or save their clothing. They don't want to throw it away, so they might sew up that rip in your jeans or your shirt or whatever, and they use a needle, because a needle you can go in and out through the fabric, and you can use a thread with the needle, and you can close a hole. So the thread will go here, right through there. And this is an interesting part of the needle, by the way. We call that the eye. The eye of a needle, right? A needle, of course, is a thin, sharp. Be careful. This is sharp. That's a very sharp point. That's dangerous. That is sharp. So be careful with needles. It can enter your skin and ouch, it hurts. So be careful with needles. It's a thin, sharp object, usually can be used for other things, but usually used in sewing. Like I said, sewing, that's to repair your clothes. So you put the thread, this is the thread, you put the thread through the eye of the needle, and you use the sharp end to poke through the cloth, and you can sew up a hole in your clothing. Okay, that's a needle.
Lesson 5. Plant adaptations. Hairy. Having a lot of hair. Flat. Having no high or curved parts. Lose. To not have something any longer. Freeze. To become hard and solid because the temperature goes below 0 degrees Celsius. Conserve. To keep and protect from loss or waste. Environment. The natural world. Close. Next to. Not far from. Needle. A thin, sharp object usually used in sewing.
Okay, our first word is interesting. You may have not heard this word before. It's humus. Humus. The pronunciation is humus. Sometimes people get a little confused about that. But humus, think about another word that's pronounced very similarly, but is a different word. Human, but this is humus. So human, humus. Similar pronunciation at the beginning. Humus, not human. Okay, and also be careful because humus is not hummus. Hummus is a food from the Middle East. Humus is the part of soil made from dead plants or animals. So don't get them confused, right? Ugh, I want some humus for dinner. Ugh, that's horrible. That's disgusting. But hummus is very delicious and it's very nutritious. It's a good food for you. So it's interesting. Hummus, H-U-M-M-U-S, hummus. Okay, that's a food. Okay? So be careful with these words, pronunciation, and don't get it mixed up with the food from the Middle East. Okay, humus. Okay, good. Next word. Grain. Grain is a very small piece of a hard thing, not a soft thing, right? A hard thing. So, very good example. When you go to the beach, what do you find at the beach? You find a lot of sand near the water, right? If you pick up that sand, is it all together? No, it's in little pieces. And you let the sand fall through your fingers, through your hand, until just one piece is left. Just one piece of sand, and we call that a grain of sand. But grain is also used for many types of food, like if you have wheat or rice. You have a lot of rice. You pick up rice, it all falls through your hand, but you have one piece of rice left, and that piece of rice is a grain of rice. So grain is a very small piece, one single piece of a hard thing, but it usually occurs in large quantities, right? Rice, wheat, sugar. Sugar, you can have a grain of sugar. Sweet. Okay. Anyway, that's grain. Okay. Dig. Do you like to dig in your yard? Now, a lot of people unfortunately don't have yards. We live in high-rise apartments, but if you have a backyard, you might dig a hole to put a plant in it. Now, here we have an animal that's a professional digger. It digs for a living. Well, it digs because it lives underground. It's called a mole, M-O-L-E. This is a type of animal, right? That is a mole. And they dig in the ground. They're very good at digging in the ground. Many animals like to dig in the ground. Your dog, if it gets the chance, might like to dig a hole in the ground. So to dig. Okay. And here we have a video of a rabbit digging. Rabbits live underground. They will make their home underground. And rabbits can dig a hole. They'll dig and make a little tunnel, and they'll live in a hole with their family. And this is just an example of a rabbit. Looks like a rabbit in a zoo or maybe some kind of place where you can go see them. And they gave it some dirt because the rabbit's instinct is to dig. Okay, next, collect. Collect means to gather, right? You want to get many different pieces of something and bring it all together, you collect it. So to come or to bring together from other places. Another word that's very similar to collect is gather. To gather. It means to get many pieces of something and to bring them all together in a pile or some kind of organized pile, organized stack. To collect, to bring together from other places. Okay. Decompose, interesting word, decompose. When something dies, or, when you eat something like an apple, right? You eat the apple. Do you eat the whole apple? You don't eat the core of the apple. You throw it away. Well, what happens to it? It breaks down over time. Sun, wind, rain, earth, if it gets trampled, it will break down over time, and it will rot also by itself, right? It will turn brown and turn into a liquid and, kind of go into the ground, decompose. That's for dead plants or dead animals will break down naturally, and they'll become part of the soil. And what do you call that? Humus, right? Okay, that's what we learned at the beginning. Okay, so decompose. Weather. Now, the weather is very powerful sometimes, and it's always there. So over a long time, the weather can have very dramatic effects, but it takes a long time. Well, sometimes it can have a very dramatic effect over a short time if it's a hurricane or cyclone or typhoon. To change under the action of the weather is here. So weather, it's a different meaning. Now, we know what the weather is. The weather is it sunny? Is it raining? Is it windy? Is it cold? Is it hot? That's the weather. But to weather something means to change or to have an effect of change over a long time because of the weather. So it's a little bit of a different sense. Weather, to change, to have an effect. I'm trying to make a different definition for it. To have a reaction, not an reaction, a reaction to the environment, because environment. It's not just the weather that you can weather. For example, let's say you have a bad experience in your life and you survive it, but it teaches you something. So even though that's not the weather, it's a bad experience, you weathered it. And hopefully you became stronger because of it. So to weather means to endure or to change because of the weather. Now, this is an interesting picture. Like I said, I grew up in the southwest of America. We can see many examples of this. The Grand Canyon is a good example. Of course, the Grand Canyon was formed by a river, but many of the rocks that are still standing, the wind has been pushing them for centuries, right? For hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years in some parts of the desert. And you can see that the rocks have strange shapes. They have some fantastic shapes sometimes, some amazing shapes. And that's because the wind has been weathering the rocks for a very long time. So to change under the action of the weather is also to weather. So it's a little bit of a different idea. It's not the weather, it's to weather, okay? To change under the action of the weather. Okay, next. We have mixture. So remember I was talking before about sand, rice, sugar, wheat, right? Let's say you mixed all those together. All those little grains, you mixed them together. So you have lots of grains of different things together. That is a mixture, okay? If you like to eat grains for cereal, like granola, granola is a mixture of different grains. You probably have wheat in there, you might have rice, you have some nuts in there, you might have some berries in there. So that's a combination of different things. They're all mixed together. It's delicious when you eat it for breakfast. Okay. Next we have pile, right? We saw that picture before when we saw collect, right? Collect, you gather. When you gather things together, when you collect them, you probably make a pile of something. And your pile can be very neat and straight. If the things that you are collecting are like square or easy to build on, if they're not square, they're round, they kind of roll around like marbles, then you just kind of have a little pile of things. And it's hard to put marbles on top of each other. But if you have something else, you just make a pile. And sometimes your pile can look like this. If it's blocks or squares, you can make a pile that's very neat. But usually a pile of something, it kind of looks like this, right? That's a pile. So a pile of leaves, a pile of sand, a pile of grains of something. A number of things on top of each other. Okay, that's our vocabulary for today.
Lesson 6. Soil. Humus. The part of soil made of dead plants or animals. Grain. A very small piece of a hard thing. Dig. To make a hole in the ground. Collect. To come or bring together from other places. Decompose. For dead plants or animals to break down. Weather. To change under the action of the weather. Mixture. A combination of different things. Pile. A number of things on top of each other.
Okay, as usual, let's begin with the vocabulary. Our first vocabulary word or phrase is die out. Die, that's a sad word, right? It means something stops living. But when you talk about a whole group of things, like maybe a whole species or maybe many individuals in a large group, they all die at the same time. You can say to die out. Die out means to become less in number and finally stop existing. Do you know that more than 90% of all living species that lived on the earth have died out in history? Isn't that amazing? We are very lucky to be alive, but there are many, many animals that we've never seen before that lived on the earth a long, long time ago, and they all died out. But wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be fascinating to see some of these animals? All we can look at are their fossils. Okay, let's continue. Bury. Bury means to put something under the ground, right? If you dig a hole in the ground, you put something in the hole and you put earth on top of it. That means to bury. To bury. Sometimes things just get buried naturally too. Rot. Ugh. It's a smelly word, okay? When something rots, it becomes softer and slowly breaks down. Usually a dead thing will rot. Like in this case, we see a dead fish. A dead fish on the beach. The sun will hit it. The air, will make it change. It slowly breaks down. It smells terrible, right? But it slowly breaks down, breaks apart, and it becomes part of the soil. We covered that in a previous lesson. So rot means to become softer and slowly break down. It's not just animals, but also any fruit or vegetable. A lot of the food that you eat, you throw it away. Where does it go? If you throw it away on the land, it will rot and go back into the soil, and that's good for the soil. But a lot of food waste winds up in other places as well. Hopefully we can recycle it and use it to make better soil. But that's a different unit. Okay, rot. Remains. What is rotting? Well, the remains of an animal or a plant are rotting. The remains are the parts of something left after the rest has disappeared. So in this case, we can see what looks like a cow. The cow died in the field. It started to rot, and all the meat, all the flesh has rotted away. What remains? Some of the skin, the hide of a cow, and the bones. The bones are very tough and strong material, so they are the last to rot and go away. Print. A print is a mark left on a surface made by an object pressed into it. What does that mean? Well, think about a ground that's soft. It's like mud, right? And let's say I take my hand, right, and I push it into the mud and I let go. What do I see? I see an outline or a print of my hand, right? So if I push the mud and let go, right, I make a mark in the mud. And that is a print. It's a hand print, right? But of course, many things that die in soft soil like mud or clay will leave a print. It will leave an outline of the shape. Interesting. Next, we have fossil. Now, the fossil is the hard print of an animal or plant found in a rock, right? We just learned print, right? And I told you if you push your hand into mud, right, and then let go, you have an outline of your hand. Now, let's say that mud dries, right? And then another material fills your handprint, a softer material, right? And over a long time, and then the print and all the material is buried under lots of rock, and there's lots of pressure, right? Well, that mud will turn into rock, but that mud still carries your handprint, right? So thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years later, maybe that mud turns into rock because a lot of material is on top of it. It gets buried and it turns into hard rock. And millions of years ago, millions of years later, maybe somebody moves the rock away and they see, oh, there's a handprint there. It could be your handprint. Amazing. Okay, so that's a fossil, right? It's the hard print of an animal or plant found in a rock that is formed over thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. Very interesting. Okay. Dinosaur. Now, like I said before, a lot of animals that lived on the earth have died out a long, long time ago. Dinosaurs lived on the earth 65 million years and earlier on the earth. There were many kinds of dinosaurs, big dinosaurs, small dinosaurs, very ferocious, scary dinosaurs, and some small dinosaurs that were cute. And probably we thought, oh, that would make a good pet, but maybe not. But anyway, there are many species of dinosaurs living on the earth millions and millions of years ago, before 65 million years ago. And dinosaurs are a type of reptile. Reptile is like a lizard. In fact, dinosaur is Greek. In Greek, dinosaur means terrible lizard. So terrible lizard. Think about that. Of course, if you saw the picture, this looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Really tall, big teeth, sharp claws. Oh my gosh, yes, that is a terrible lizard. Okay, so dinosaur is a type of reptile lived millions of years ago. Okay, our last word or phrase is dry out. Dry out, to become very dry. It means all the water leaves something. Remember the example I just gave you? You put your hand in mud. Well, the mud is wet. There's a lot of water in the mud. That's why you can push your hand into the mud. But imagine you do that and then it doesn't rain for a long time, and the sun's very hot, and the sun dries out all the mud. So all the water comes out of the mud, and the mud becomes hard. So that means to become dry. When there's no moisture, no rain, things will dry out. Okay, those are our words for the lesson today.
Lesson 7. Fossils. Die out. To become less in number and finally stop existing. Bury. To put something under the ground. Rot. To become softer and slowly break down. Remains. The parts of something left after the rest has disappeared. Print. A mark left on a surface made by an object pressed onto it. Fossil. The hard print of an animal or plant found in rock. Dinosaur. A type of reptile that lived millions of years ago. dry out. To become dry.
Okay, let's get started with the vocabulary as usual. First of all, we can see our first word is coal. Coal is this black rock. You've probably seen coal before. It's a black substance dug up from the ground that can burn. You know, in our lesson 7, we just did that in this book. We talked about animals that die. You know, their remains get buried under mud, sand, and rock, and they turn into fossils. Well, that doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes, or many times, the bodies of animals and plants get buried and they get pressed together and they turn into carbon. Carbon is a type of coal, and you can burn it, right? So actually, coal is the remains of dead animals and plants that died a long, long time ago, okay? So it formed into like a rock. It's a hard rock. And probably your dad or your mom, when they have an outdoor barbecue, they take little pieces of coal and they put them in the grill and then they burn them, right? Because coal burns. It burns very well. It causes a nice fire, and you can cook meat on top of coal. A lot of barbecues use coal. And if you ever hear of coal-fired barbecue, it means a barbecue that uses coal. So it's a black substance dug up from the ground that can burn. And it burns and it gives off heat, which allows you to cook things. It allows you to keep your house warm. It even was used to power steam engines a long time ago, and still today. Okay, next. Ore is, we talked about coal. Coal is like a natural resource, right? But coal is a specific type of natural resource. You use it to burn. Now, ore is similar to coal, but ore is for any kind of metal or like mineral. It's a rock or soil which you can get metal out of, ore. So what kind of metal can you get out of ore? Well, there's tin ore. So if you have like an aluminum can, for example, it's made out of tin or actually aluminum, but cans were made out of tin a long time ago. They would mine the ore and they would melt it down and they get the liquid metal. It's called tin. But it's not just tin. Many precious metals like copper, silver, gold, these are all found in ores. A lot of times, when miners dig in the ground, they don't just find, silver already made, right? The silver is in little pieces, little parts. Sometimes you can't even see it, and it's in the rock. In the rock, we call that silver ore. Maybe you don't see the silver or gold, but if you crush the rock and you mix it with chemicals, you can pull the silver, gold, or copper out of the rock, and then it becomes an ingot. It becomes pure copper or pure silver or pure gold. It's not an ore anymore. It's the actual metal. But it comes from ore. It comes from the ground, and we call that ore. Rock or soil, you can get metal out of it. Okay. Okay, next. Reduce. Reduce means to make something smaller in amount or size, right? If you have a candy jar in your home, right? You eat the candy every day. Well, the amount of candy reduces, right? It gets smaller and smaller every day until your mom buys more. But be careful, don't eat too much candy. Okay, but anyway, reduce means to make something smaller in amount or size. Okay, next. Use up. If you use all of something, so there's nothing left, you used it all up. If you have a printer at home and you have some paper, right? Every day you might print 1 or 2 pieces of paper, pages of something, maybe your homework, maybe, something you have to read, and you print those pages. Well, after a while, the amount of paper is reduced every day until it's all gone. The paper is used up. So the paper is all used up, or the paper is used up. You don't have to say all used up. Some people do, but just say the paper is all used up. When we talk about resources, it's very common to talk about used up. All the coal is used up. All the ore in this mine is used up. It's gone. We used it all. We used all of it, so there's no more left. Okay, good. Next, we have replace. To replace means to provide a new thing instead of something that was broken, stolen, or lost. But it also means, in this case, in the picture, we can see a forest. And it looks like people have come and they cut down the trees to get wood to build houses and other things. Now, you can replace those trees by growing new trees. And we see this in many parts of the world, especially there are many companies that are called logging companies. Logging, L-O-G. Why? Because log, this is a log here. That's a log. And this is another log here. So those are called logs. So a logging company is a company that cuts trees for the logs, sends them to a factory. They make wood or paper out of them, and then we use those products in our everyday life. But the logging companies, they have to be smart, right? They don't want to go out of business. So they'll plant new trees in this area. The new trees will grow into bigger trees, and then, 20 years later, 30 years later, they'll come and cut those trees down. So they have to think really far ahead in the future. So, to replace, to provide a new one instead of something broken, lost, or stolen. Okay, next. Supply. Supply is the amount of something that you have. Remember I gave you the example about the paper and a printer, right? That amount of paper, that is your paper supply. That is how much paper you have. So the supply is how much of something you have. So whether it's paper, whether it's ore, whether it's trees, whether it's coal, whatever, how much is there? That is your supply. If you have a big supply, you have a lot of it. If you have a small supply, you only have a little bit of it. You will use it up quickly if it's small. Okay, so now we have a video showing supply, and it's kind of a long story, but I'll get to supply. What we can see here are many machines in a field. What are these machines? They're called wind turbines. And what are those things that are turning around? Those are called propellers. So I'm teaching you a couple new vocabulary terms. Look how high they are. Look at how small the cars are over there. Wow, these things are really high up there. But they're high because they catch the wind. The wind is stronger. The higher you get off the ground, the stronger the wind is. So you want to put your propellers, I told you propeller. This is a propeller. This part here, that's the part that turns. When the wind hits the propeller, it makes it turn. Now on an airplane, a propeller airplane, there's an engine that makes the propeller turn, and the propeller makes the wind, it pushes the plane forward in the wind, in the air, and that allows it to take off. We don't have propeller airplanes now, we have jet airplanes. But this is the opposite. There's no engine making the propeller turn, it's the wind that makes the propeller turn. Now here we have a turbine. And you can call the whole thing, well that's a stand, this is called a wind turbine. Now a turbine is a machine that turns the energy. The motion of the propeller creates energy, and the turbine changes that the movement, that energy of moving, it turns it into a different type of energy that we call electricity. Of course, everybody's familiar with electricity. So when you think about it, these wind turbines, they are using the supply of wind. Now, wind is always there, right? So supply, here we have an endless supply, supply of. Yeah, this pen sometimes misses. Supply, there we go. And P. Okay, so endless means it does not end. It's always there. Endless supply. So if you have something that can never be used up, right? It's an endless supply. When you think about it, the wind will always be there. The wind keeps moving. So it is an endless supply of energy. Great. Okay, well, that's our vocabulary for this lesson. Let's move on to the main ideas.
Lesson 8. Different types of natural resources. Coal. A black substance dug up from the ground that can burn. Ore. Rock or soil which you can get metal out of. Reduce. To make something smaller in amount or size. Use up. To use all of something so that there is none left. Replace. To provide a new one instead of something broken, stolen, or lost. Supply. An amount of something that you have.
As usual, we will start with the vocabulary. Now, there are many words that are related to weather because weather is very important for our lives. One interesting word about weather is hail. Have you seen hail before? Sometimes hail doesn't happen in certain parts of the world, but if you live in some colder parts of the world, you might see hail. What is hail? Hail is small, hard balls of ice that fall from the sky like rain. Now, I say small, but sometimes in some places, hail can be bigger. It can be big and it can be dangerous, right? In some places in America, I remember seeing news reports of big pieces of ice falling down. Now that can be dangerous and it can damage, usually it damages cars or homes. I don't remember, and I hope it never happens that somebody is hurt or injured or killed by hail, but it's possible, so you got to be careful. But hail is just ice falling from the sky, right? So it's kind of crazy when you see hail. Actually, we have a video showing hail, and this is not really strong hail. These are small pieces of ice, and you can't really see them in the air because, it's kind of a white sky, so it's hard to see the hail, but you can see it bouncing on the ground as it lands, and this is small hail. This is not a big deal. This is not dangerous. But if hail gets big, it can be dangerous. And usually people, the weather forecasters will say, be careful. There's a warning for hail. And as soon as it starts hitting, people run inside, right? So yeah, be careful. But I don't mean to scare you. Hail is not that common, and it's not really dangerous, but it's really strange to see sometimes. When it does happen, it is interesting to see. Okay. Precipitation. Wow, what a big word. Precipitation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 syllables. Precipitation. Precipitation. Precipitation is water that falls from the clouds to the ground. And guess what? The word we just learned, hail, it's ice, that's frozen water. So hail is a type of precipitation. Now, usually, when we talk about precipitation, we're talking about rain. But when it's winter time, the rain, of course, is liquid water. In the winter, the water freezes and, it could come down as hail, but usually it comes down as snow. So there are many different types of precipitation. It's just water that falls from the clouds to the ground. Okay, so good. Yeah, precipitation, big word, but it covers many different types. Okay, good. A rain gauge. Now, a gauge is an instrument that measures something, usually how much or how many of something there is. In this case, a rain gauge is an instrument for measuring how much rain falls. So, weather forecasters, people who talk about the weather, they need numbers, right? They need to know exactly how much. So they might say, okay, tomorrow we expect 2 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain, right? So how did they measure that? Well, they have a rain gauge that tells them how much water will fall during a certain time and in a certain area. So they measure that. And they say, okay, we expect, 3 centimeters of rain tomorrow, for example. Okay, so a rain gauge. Remember, a gauge, there are many kinds of gauges, not just a rain gauge. There's a speed gauge in your car. It tells you how fast you're going. It's called a speedometer, not a speed gauge. It's called a speedometer, but it is a gauge. A gauge is any instrument that tells you the quantity, how much or how many of something there is. Okay, good. Next. Thermometer. Now, a thermometer is another type of gauge, right? It tells us how hot it is. What is the temperature? What degree? How many degrees is the air outside, right? Is it hot, a lot of degrees, or is it cold, very few degrees? How many, right? Or how much? Thermometer. A thermometer is a device, a gauge used to measure temperature. So, of course, we have thermometers all over the world. There's 2 types of thermometers in use in the world. Of course, most of the world uses a thermometer in Celsius. Americans, for some reason, still use the old Fahrenheit. Did I spell that right? I think so. Height? I think it's height. Sorry. Nope, that's wrong. Height. Americans still use Fahrenheit. Why? They're old-fashioned. The rest of the world uses Celsius. When I came to Korea, I had to get used to Celsius because I was used to Fahrenheit. And so, I was used to, it's 78 degrees out. That's great. But my Korean friend would say, 78 degrees, that's crazy, right? You can't live in 78 degrees. That's Celsius, right? 78 degrees Fahrenheit is a very nice day. Very, very great day. 80 degrees Fahrenheit, that's a nice day. But 80 degrees Celsius, yeah, you don't want to be there. Okay, so anyway, thermometer. Thermometer is a device used to measure temperature. Okay, good. Next. Okay, our next word is weather vane. A weather vane is another instrument that weather people use to talk about the weather. And a weather vane basically tells people which direction the wind is blowing. If you look at the picture here, it's kind of interesting, right? Because we see north, south, east, and west. So if we look at the weather vane, and these are usually on the tops of tall buildings, right? It's made of metal. It's a metal object that blows around. Blows around means it moves. It moves around, and it can move, 360 degrees to show which way the wind is coming from. So in this picture, we can see the wind makes the weather vane move in a certain way, and it points to the direction that the weather is coming from. So it looks like here, the weather is blowing in the direction of, looks like east, maybe a little bit north, okay? So it's coming from the south, or it's coming from the west, maybe a little bit south. That tells you which direction the wind is coming from. This is important to weather people who predict the weather, because, they study weather patterns, okay? And it's also important for farmers because they need to know, which way the wind is blowing. That might help them plan for the weather in the next few days. Okay, next. We have meteorologist, a meteorologist. Ologist, if you ever see this ending, that means someone who studies something. Someone who studies something. So, for example, I think I said before, my dad, in his career, he was a geologist. Geo means earth. So geologist is someone who studies the earth. So what is a meteorologist? A meteorologist is someone who studies meteors, right? No, I'm sorry, that's not true. Meteors, of course, are like Halley's Comet, or those objects that come around. Those are comets, but meteors are those things that fall to Earth. Now, meteorologists don't study those things. It's an interesting word. Why does meteorologist mean weather person, right? Someone who studies the weather. Well, that's that's what it means. That's it has an interesting history to it. But anyway, an ologist is someone who studies something. They don't study meteors, they study the weather, okay? So yeah, be careful with that word. But usually geologist studies Earth. Bio means life. So a biologist is someone who studies life, okay? So interesting. So, but this one is a bit weird. It's not weatherologist, it's meteorologist. Okay, so be careful with that word. So it's a scientist who studies weather conditions. And usually meteorologists are important because they can predict the weather. And when you watch the news, probably a meteorologist comes on and explains what the weather will be like tomorrow, the next day, next week. It's hard to predict 2 weeks in the future, but they try to. And but usually it's an important, obviously an important job because we need to know whether it's going to rain, whether it's going to snow, if there's a flood coming, if there's a hurricane coming. So we need to know these things, and that's what meteorologists do. Okay, and those are our words for this lesson.
Lesson 9. Parts of weather. Hail. Small, hard balls of ice that fall as rain. Precipitation. Water that falls from the clouds to the ground. Rain gauge. An instrument for measuring how much rain falls. Thermometer. A device used to measure temperature. Weather vane. A metal object that blows around to show which way the wind is coming from. Meteorologist. A scientist who studies weather conditions.
As always, let's start with the vocabulary. Our first word is axis. Axis is an interesting word. An axis is a line around which something turns. Now here we have an interesting picture. It looks a little complicated, right? But it's an important picture, and it's an important idea to think about, because when we think about the earth, right, we have the north and the south. On the north is on the top and south is on the bottom. But it's not exactly top and bottom. It's a little bit like this. And that line is not a straight line up and down. It's kind of a diagonal line, and that is the axis. Now, the earth turns around that axis. The earth doesn't turn around a line that's straight up and down. The earth turns around a line that is tilted a little bit, and we'll look at tilt in a little bit, but it's not straight up and down, it's on its side just a little bit, and the earth turns like this. So axis, a line around which something turns, okay? So if you have a top, if you have a spinning toy, right, and you spin it, the axis is straight up and down, but after that toy loses energy, it begins to do this, and the axis moves. It's not straight up and down anymore. It moves from side to side. That is the axis. Okay, good. Next. Tilt. What I just talked about, right? The line, if you spin that toy, right, and it's spinning at the beginning, there's no tilt. It's straight up and down. But like I said, as it loses energy, it begins to move like this, and it tilts from side to side. Now, the earth doesn't do that very quickly, right? The earth isn't losing energy as fast as your top. Whew, thank goodness, okay? But the earth doesn't spin straight up and down. It is at a tilt. Tilt means to cause something to be in a sloping position. Sloping position, we can also say diagonal. Diagonal, right? This would be a straight line up and down. This is a diagonal line. So if something moves around on an axis that's and it's not a straight up and down line, it's tilting a little bit, okay? And the Earth does this. That's a very important thing to know and to remember. Okay, tilt. Orbit. Now, another thing that's going on, independent of the rotation of the Earth, is that the Earth is moving around the sun. For a long time, people thought the sun moved around the Earth, but no, it doesn't happen that way. The sun stays put. Well, the sun moves. Everything is moving. But in our solar system, if you just look at the solar system, the sun is stationary. It doesn't move, and the planets orbit around the sun. So orbit is to move around something in a continuous curving path. It might not be a perfect circle. In fact, some planets they're not in a perfect circle. They're a little bit long or short in some parts, depending on which part of the circle you're looking at. We call that an oval, right? But if something moves around something, right, we call that an orbit. And the Earth is orbiting the sun. The moon is orbiting the Earth, right? And all the other planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all of them are orbiting the sun, okay? So to orbit, to move around something in a continuous curving path. Rotate. So the Earth is doing really two main motions, right? The Earth is moving in an orbit, but at the same time, it's also turning on its axis. So there are two important motions to think about here, right? The Earth is moving this way, but as it moves, it's also spinning, right? That's interesting, okay? So that spinning motion, we say it is rotating. So to turn with a circular movement. And why is that important? Let's talk about that. Because if the Earth didn't rotate, we wouldn't have sunrises, right? So the Earth is moving like this as it goes around the sun, and because it's rotating very fast relative to the speed at which it goes around the sun, different parts of the Earth are shown to the sun at different times. And it takes 24 hours to fully rotate, to spin around once. And because of that, our day is 24 hours long, right? And the start of the day is sunrise. When the Earth turns, and you live in this part of the Earth turns, the sun seems to rise. The sun doesn't rise, right? As I said, the sun doesn't move. But we are on Earth. We don't know we're moving, right? Because we were born this way. We're just used to the motion. We don't think of it as we're moving, right? Right now, you're probably sitting at your desk watching this on your computer screen or maybe on your cell phone. But you feel, I'm not moving. Yes, you are. We're all moving very quickly. We're moving like this. We're also moving like this, okay? So it looks like the sun is coming up over the edge of the land. It's not really coming up. It's just because the Earth is turning that we call it sunrise. So the sun seems to rise in the morning. The time in the morning when you first see the sun, we call that sunrise. And we have a video of that. And as you can see, it's morning. You can't tell, is it morning or is it evening? Well, if you just wait a little bit, right, you can see, there's the sun. It's coming up. We see it gradually coming up over the mountains. Now, it's not very quick. I mean, it seems kind of quick, sure, but thankfully the day isn't, really fast, okay? And we have a lot of hours to enjoy the sunlight and to do the things we need to do during the day. But the sun seems to come up over the mountains. Oh, we can also call this the horizon. Horizon. So the horizon is the edge of our sight, right? And in this case, it's very easy. It's the mountains. But if it's flat, right, if there are no mountains, the horizon would be down here, right? Okay, good. What is the opposite of sunrise? Of course, that is sunset. The sun seems to fall down and disappear over the horizon. This is the horizon here, right? The edge of the land, or the sea in this case, the edge of the water. Sunset is the time in the evening when you last see the sun. Bye-bye, sun. We'll see you in the morning. Okay? So when you last see the sun, that is the sunset. Okay, those are the words for vocabulary today.
Lesson 10. Day, night, and seasons. Axis. A line around which something turns. Tilt. To cause something to be in a sloping position. Orbit. To move around something in a continuous, curving path. Rotate. To turn with a circular movement. Sunrise. The time in the morning when you first see the sun. Sunset. The time in the evening when you last see the sun.
Okay, as usual, let's begin with the vocabulary because we need to understand some words to talk about this subject. First of all, we have the word mass. Mass. What is mass? Mass is the amount of matter in something. Now, I made a little joke at the beginning of this lesson. I said, what's the matter? But that's a different meaning. It's important also to discuss what is matter. Matter is everything. Right? Look around you, right? You see the table. The table is made of wood or plastic. That is matter, right? Look in a mirror. You see your skin, your bones, your flesh. That is matter too. In fact, there's something all around us that we can't see. Usually we can't see it. Sometimes we can see it, but it's air. And that is matter too. Anywhere there are atoms, that is matter. Okay, so matter is all around us. It's everything physical that's around us. That is what we mean by matter. And when we talk about mass, it's the amount of things. And let's talk about atoms. Maybe you already know the word atom. Atom is a very small particle or piece of something, right? It's a very small, you can't see it. It's so small. So you can imagine that mass is the amount of atoms in a certain thing, right? If I have a pen, what is the mass of this pen? That is what is the amount of atoms or material that makes up this pen. That is the mass. That is the amount of matter in something. Okay, interesting idea. Length. Length means how long something is. So I just showed you this pen, right? How long is this pen? Now I'm used to inches. I'm not very familiar with centimeters. So I would say this pen is about 1, 2, maybe 3 inches long. How much is that in centimeters? I'm not sure. I don't usually use centimeters. But it's about 3 inches long. That's how long it is from one end to the other. That's the length of something. The length. Okay. Okay, next we have height. Now we just talked about length. That's the measurement from one end to the other. But what if I turn the pen this way and we're going to talk about height, right? And when we talk about height, we can also say, how tall is it? And if somebody says to you, how tall are you? How tall are you? They're asking you about your height. Maybe you would answer, 100 centimeters to 120 centimeters. I'm not sure, but maybe you're in that range, right? How tall are you? I know in inches, I'm more familiar with inches. I know my height is 6 foot and 1 inch, but I don't really know that well in centimeters how tall I am. But probably you guys are maybe 100 centimeters, 120 centimeters, 130 centimeters. How tall are you? What is the height from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head? How tall are you? That's the measurement of something from its bottom to its top. Okay. Width. Well, we're talking about a lot of dimensions, right? We talked about length. We talked about height. Now, imagine I'm holding the pen this way, right? And the height is this way, but the width, how wide is it, right? So the width is how wide something is. I just asked you, how tall are you? That's your height. I'm asking about your height, but I won't ask you, what is your width? That's a very strange question. How wide are you? And usually people don't ask that anyway, because it could be impolite. Some people are skinny, right? Skinny. Skinny isn't really a positive word. It's a little bit of a negative word. It means somebody needs to eat more food. Okay, they're too skinny, they're too thin. And of course, some people can be very wide or broad. Yeah, okay, you can say fat, but fat is a rude word. Don't say someone is fat. That is not polite. So usually we don't talk about that, right? But that's what it means. You know, if a person is skinny, they're not very wide. If a person is fat, they are quite wide. Usually people, and then if somebody's in the in-between range, we just say they're normal. But we don't really talk about that for people. We do talk about how wide things are for other things like furniture. We want to know, can we fit it through the door, right? If your couch is too wide, you can't get it inside your house. How are you going to get it inside your house? It's too wide. So maybe you have to go in a different way. So width. So an object, what is its height? What is its length? And what is its width? Okay, so 3 dimensions. We call these 3 dimensions. Dimension. And there are usually 3 dimensions when we talk about the physical properties of something. And those, of course, are length, height, and width. The 3 dimensions. 3D. Okay, good. Volume. Now, volume is another way to measure something, and it's the amount of space that something takes up. So here I have a water bottle, right? And you can see the water is it's about half full. So the volume of the water is only about half the width or the size of this water bottle. So the volume is the amount of space that something takes up. Now, if I was to heat up this water, if I was to make this water hotter, the volume would expand. It would take up more of the space inside of this water bottle. So the volume is just how much space does something take up. Okay, good. Property. A property, now there's different meanings for property. You might think property is my house, that's my property, or my backpack is my property. But we're talking about a different idea here. A property is also, we can say it's a quality. It's like a distinction. It's a unique adjective or thing about an object, some type of matter. So there are many different properties, and we'll talk about those in a little bit, but just to give you an idea, a property might be how long it is. We just talked about length. A property might be how tall it is. That's another property. But a property might be what color is it, or what shape is it. Those are all different properties of a certain object or of different kinds of matter. Next, we have a balance. Now, a balance, this looks like an old machine, right? But we still use it these days, and there's an important thing that we use it for. A balance is a device. A device is like a tool or a machine that's used for measuring the mass of something. So I talked about mass before, right? Mass is how much matter is in something, how many atoms or how much material is in an object. And we use a balance to measure that quantity or measure that property of a certain object. Now you might think, why don't we just, a balance is old. If you want to know how much it weighs, why don't you just use a scale? But there's an important difference here. A balance is used for measuring the mass of something, not the weight, right? You can use it to measure the weight of something, but mass and weight are not the same. They're not the same thing. Mass is, as we learned before, how much material is in something. Weight is how much something weighs in terms of kilograms or pounds. And the idea here is that weight can change depending on location. What do I mean? Something weighs different in America than it does in Korea? Huh? No, not like that. Weight changes in relation to how far away from something that exerts gravity is. Think about the movies. Like you may have seen movies about space, right? Astronauts out in space, and they're in the space shuttle, or they're on the station in outer space. They're not walking around. They're floating around, right? So somebody who weighs 100 kilograms on Earth, they don't weigh anything out in space. There's no weight, but their mass is the same. Aha! So you want to measure mass, use a balance. Because a balance, on one side, you put like a 1 kilogram weight. Oh, I'm a horrible artist, I'm sorry. But maybe this is made of metal, right? And it weighs 1 kilogram, right? And you put it on this side, and then you put the object that you want to measure over here. And if it's the same, if this bar is perfectly flat, that means that the mass, the amount of material, is the same in the 1 kilogram weight as it is in the object that you're measuring for the place that you are, right? So yes, you are measuring weight, but the weight changes. If you use a balance at sea level, like at a beach, right? And then you use the same balance and the same object, the same weight on top of Mount Everest, there might be a slight difference because things are heavier at sea level than they are at elevation. In other words, on top of a mountain. So if your mom or dad is complaining about, oh, I'm getting too fat, just tell them, hey, let's move to Switzerland. No, I'm just kidding. That's crazy. The amount of difference is very small. But for scientists, it can be very important to measure the exact amount. They need to know the exact amount of mass, so they will use a balance to get it very precise. So no matter if they're measuring something at the beach or they're on top of a mountain in a laboratory somewhere, it doesn't matter where they are. They can still use a balance to find the exact mass and not worry about gravity changing the weight in terms of elevation. Whew, that's a long explanation for one word. Okay, anyway. Next, mold. Mold is a verb in this case, to mold something. To mold something is to take a soft substance, a soft material, like clay, for example. Or maybe you have Play-Doh, right? In your toys, do you have something like putty or Play-Doh that you can make little characters out of it, right? That's a soft substance, and you mold it into a shape. Let's say you want to make a head, right? So you mold that Play-Doh or that putty or clay into the shape of a head. Or in this case, this woman looks like she's making a bowl. She's taking clay and she's molding the clay into the shape of a bowl. Okay, those are our words for this lesson.
Lesson 11. Describing matter. Mass. The amount of matter in something. Length. How long something is. Height. The measurement of something from its bottom to its top. Width. How wide something is. Volume. The amount of space that something takes up. Property. A quality that something has. Balance. A device used for measuring the mass of something. Mold. To turn a soft substance into a shape.
Okay, we always begin with a vocabulary section. So let's learn some new words, or maybe go over words you already know that will be used in the lesson and in the reading section. The first word is stir. To stir means to mix liquids or solids together. You probably stir many times in your life already. Sometimes your drink, let's say you have a drink and it's tea, and the tea, you taste it, ooh, it's too bitter. So you want to change the taste. You might take some sugar, put the sugar in the tea. Don't put too much sugar in the tea. That's what my wife always tells me. Anyway, put some sugar in the tea and then use a spoon and you stir it. Because if you don't stir it, the sugar just goes to the bottom of the tea and stays there. You don't want that. You want the sugar to mix with the liquid so that everything is sweet, not just the bottom part. So you stir the sugar, and what happens? The sugar will mix with the liquid. So the sugar is a solid and the tea is a liquid. And I should say at this point that we have liquids, we have solids. Those are two forms of matter. What's the third form of matter? We have liquid, solid, and gas. So matter can have three different forms. It can be a gas, it can be a liquid, or it can be a solid. And the difference between them is the temperature. Usually, if a matter is solid, that's the coolest temperature. Then it gets warmer, it becomes a liquid. Then it gets even warmer, it may become a gas. Sometimes, not. You have to have very extreme temperatures for some things. Okay, stir. But stir, I went off on stir. Stir is when you're mixing liquids and solids so that they become a liquid. They're all liquid. The solid dissolves. We'll talk about that. Anyway, we do have a video for stir, and this is a good picture or video for stirring. You can see this is probably in a factory, and they're mixing something. What are they mixing? It could be, I'm not really sure what they're mixing there. It reminds me, though, my brother-in-law works for a beer factory, and they probably have many of these types of machines to mix the different ingredients to make the beer. But it will just stir it, and it's on a machine because nobody wants to sit there with a hand and do this for an hour, right? But a machine, a stirrer, will do it for you. So to stir things together. Next, we have dissolve, and I mentioned this already. That's when you mix a solid into a liquid. For example, the sugar is a solid. You stir it in the tea, the liquid, and the result is that the solid disappears, right? That sugar disappears. What happened to it? It's still there, but it dissolved. It dissolved into the tea. So the solid became part of the liquid. Okay, and that some things will do that. Not everything, of course, but some things will do that. A physical change. A physical change is a change in matter where no new matter is made. And so what's an example of that? Of course, we just went over that. Again, when you mix sugar into tea or you mix salt into water, no new matter. You're not making any new type of matter or new type of substance. The original things, the original matter is still there. The sugar is in your tea. You just can't see it, but you can taste it. There's no new matter made. But it's been changed from a solid into a liquid. And the tea is changed too because it's now it's got the sugar in it. So it's a physical change, okay? A change in matter where no new matter is made. Evaporate. Evaporate is another type of a physical change because let's say we have that tea, right? We have the sugar. Now let's say we heat up the tea, so we want to change the liquid to a gas, right? We just talked about that. As temperatures get hotter, liquids will turn into a gas. So if you boil the tea, right, the tea, the water in the tea will evaporate. It will come into the air and disappear, and at the bottom, you have the sugar crystals at the bottom. Sugar's still there, right? So there was no change in the matter. No new matter was made. It's all still there. It's just a physical change. So dissolve and evaporate are both physical changes. They're different types of physical changes. So, but evaporate is when a liquid goes from being a liquid to a gas, and you see it every day when your mom or your dad boils water on the stove to make pasta or to make noodles, ramen. You boil water, and the water, you see the steam above the water. That means the water is changing into a gas. The water is evaporating. Don't boil the water too long, because all the water will evaporate, right? And you'll have a problem. Whatever you're cooking will burn. You don't want that. So be careful, but when you do that. Okay. Next, we have rust. Now, rust is a different kind of change. Rust means when a metal changes into new red or brown matter. New matter is created, so it's not a physical change. It's a different kind of change. We'll talk about that. But when a metal is left out, so imagine you have some metal parts. If you have a metal toy and you leave it outside and it rains and it's outside for a couple months, you like, where's my toy? And you go out, you look at it, and your metal toy is now changed into red or brown color, and maybe some stuff, powder, comes off of it, and it's not as good or as shiny as it used to be. That means that it has rusted, okay? So be careful with your metal things that you have, a bicycle, a toy. Don't leave it outside in the rain, because especially water and wind, air will make that metal rust. Okay? Some types of metal do not rust. Stainless steel doesn't rust. Okay? But many other types of metal will rust. Now, rust, as I said, is not a physical change. It is a chemical change. A chemical change is a change in matter where new matter is made. So I just gave the example of the metal, right? The metal changes it changes color, red or brown, and it's a new powder, right? That's not metal, that's a new matter. Another good example is in the picture here, right? If you have a match, right, this is a certain type of matter. But if you light the match and there's a flame, right? I'm not a very good artist. Flame, that's maybe better. What happens? It turns black and the wood changes form. Now, this isn't wood, this is ash. It's carbon, right? The chemical property of the wood and this part here, the match head, changes into new matter. That is what we call a chemical change. Chemical change where new matter is made. Okay, so we saw two different types of changes in matter. Okay, those are our words for today.
Lesson 12. Changing matter. Stir. To mix liquids or solids together. Dissolve. To mix a solid into a liquid with the result that the solid disappears. Physical change. A change in matter where no new matter is made. Evaporate. For a liquid to go from being a liquid to a gas. Rust. For a metal to change into new red or brown matter. Chemical change. A change in matter where new matter is made.
Of course, we always begin with a vocabulary section. Our first word is attract. Attract means for one object to cause another object to move towards it. Okay, attract. And that is, we're talking about magnetism here, attraction, but attraction can also be between different people. If you see somebody and they're very, wow, you really like them, or you like their personality, you are attracted to that person. You want to move closer to that person. Don't get too close, but okay, but you want to get closer to that person and be with that person, hang around with that person. Well, magnets do the same thing. Of course, they can't think. Their attraction is just natural. Okay. Next, we have repel. Repel is the opposite of attract. So if attract means the two objects are moving closer to each other, repel means that they move away from each other. And repel is for one object to cause another object to move away from it. And attraction and repel are both types of forces, right? Attraction will pull another thing towards it with a certain force. And repel, there's also some force that is acting on the two objects to separate them, to make them move away from each other. Opposite. Opposite means to be completely different, right? If I'm going north and you're going south, we are going in opposite directions, okay? So opposite is to be completely different from each other, to be completely different direction, completely different personality, a lot of different types of opposites. Magnetic. Okay, so now we get into some words more specific about the idea of this lesson. Magnetic means acting like a magnet or affected by a magnet. Magnetic is kind of like a quality, right? If you say this metal is magnetic, it means that it acts like a magnet. It has those forces of attraction or repulsion. So magnetic. Non-magnetic means it doesn't act like a magnet. It's not affected by magnetic forces. It doesn't attract other things to it. It doesn't push them away from it. It's non-magnetic. Okay? Magnetic field. Now, magnetic field is an area around a magnet where the magnet's power is felt. Now, this diagram kind of shows the magnetic field around this magnet. And you can see the field, it's a very complicated diagram, actually, if you take a look at the lines or somebody's artist's conception of what a magnetic field is. But you can kind of see it. This magnet is attracting little pieces of iron, excuse me, and you can see how the iron is arranged. If you just sprinkle the iron, it will clump together like this, and it kind of shows the outlines of the magnetic field. A magnetic field is like an invisible force around an object. You can't see it, but you can detect it using certain tools, right? And there's a magnetic field, there's an electrical field. These are two very common fields around natural objects. You can't see, they're invisible, but they do have properties and we can measure them, and they do exert some type of energy or force around them. And that's what a magnetic field is. So an area around a magnet where the magnet's power is felt. Now, I'd like to also point out one more thing, though. A magnetic field isn't very large. I mean, for huge objects it is, but for a magnet, it doesn't take a long distance to get out of the magnetic field, to get away from the area that the magnet's power is. The power of a magnet, the area is very small, right? It's not very large. So you notice that, if you have two magnets and you separate them, there's nothing going on between them. But the closer you have to get pretty close for that magnetic field to show itself or to have some type of action. Okay, so interesting. Okay, those are our vocabulary words for this lesson.
Lesson 13. Exploring magnets. Attract. For one object to cause another object to move towards it. Repel. For one object to cause another object to move away from it. Opposite. Completely different. Magnetic. Acting like a magnet. Affected by a magnet. Non-magnetic. Not acting like a magnet. Not affected by a magnet. Magnetic field. The area around a magnet where the magnet's power is felt.
As always, we begin with the vocabulary, and the first word we have is position. This is a good place to begin, right? Because we talk about where things are. Where are objects or people, right? In this case, we have a boy. So we can say, where is he, right? What is his position? Where is he located? Position and location mean the same thing. So position or location, the place where something is. The boy is on the hill, for example. Okay, that's his position. That is his location. Okay. Next word, we have backward. Now, if you drive a car, I know you're probably too young to drive a car, but if you're on a bike and you move, your feet to make your bike go behind you, you're making it move backward. Backward is a word that describes the direction in which a person or an object is moving. So, of course, you can move this way. We'll talk about that soon. But if you move this way, behind you, you're going to go behind you. You're moving backwards towards the direction that is behind you. Okay? And of course, if you're driving a car, you have to be very careful about going backward. Look, right? Make sure that you can see where you're going. Okay, backward. And of course, the opposite direction is forward. So backward, forward. Very easy. Usually, most of the time, we move forward. We walk forward. We ride our bikes forward. Your mom or your dad drives the car. Most of the time, they are going forward. They are going in the direction that is in front of you. So in front of you, you're going in that direction, you are moving forward. If you are going in the direction that is behind you, you are going backward. Forward, backward. Okay, good. Leap. Can you leap? Of course you can. Leap is like jump. Actually, leap and jump are very similar, and of course, jump is used in the definition. So jump is right there. I won't bother writing it for you. But leap is to make a large jump. It's not just a small jump. Oh, by the way, it's interesting because there's many kinds of jumps, okay? Leap is one kind of jump. It means a large jump. But what if you take a short jump, like a bunny rabbit, right? Then we say that's a hop. Hop. Pandiro, it's the opposite of leap. A hop is a short or small jump. A leap is a big jump. You go far on a leap. Or you can jump over. In this case, this woman is jumping over something, so she's going to leap. She's not going to hop. She's not going to make it over. She's going to leap over it. But they are both jumps, okay? So how high can you jump? Okay. Roll. Roll means to move an object by making it turn over and over, like the up and down, making that rotate so it rolls in a direction. Now, this is a good picture because, as you can see, it's a picture of bowling. And you have a big, heavy ball. We call that a bowling ball. And you throw it down towards the pins. And as the ball moves down the floor, it is rolling. So you want to roll the ball. It will turn over and over, right? It will turn over and over as it moves in a certain direction. Okay. Next one is motion. We've talked about several different types of motion already in this vocabulary section. Motion is just the process of moving. So forwards, that is forward motion. Backward, that is backward motion. Rolling, you could say it has a rolling motion. A jump, a leap, is also a motion. So motion just means the process of moving. And we can say, we usually use motion as a noun, right? Which motion are you using? Or what is the motion of the object? Where is it going? Is it going forward? Is it going backwards? What kind of motion? Is it jumping? Is it rolling? So we use motion as a noun. Okay, those are our words for this lesson.
Lesson 14. Position and motion. Position. The place where something is. Backward. Towards the direction that is behind you. Forward. Towards the direction that is in front of you. Leap. To make a large jump. Roll. To move by turning over and over. Motion. The process of moving.
Okay, as usual, we start with the vocabulary. So the first word is an interesting, well, it's actually a combination of two words. It's like a phrase. It is sound wave. Now, this is very important. Sound wave is the energy that you hear as sound. And what is a wave? Oh, I just drew waves, right? A wave is like this. This is a wave, actually. Yeah. So these are waves. So actually, if you look at the ocean, right, you see waves on the ocean, but it's very similar to how sound travels through something else. Okay. So sound will travel in a wave. Many things travel in a wave. We can't see it, right? And that's an interesting thing. You cannot see sound. I mean, maybe you can capture images of sound on a computer or with some recording instruments, but we cannot see with our eyes. We cannot see sound, but it travels in a wave. And this is important because as waves pass through different objects or different types of objects, it might slow down or speed up, and that's important. We'll talk about that. So sound wave, and the sound, if you think about it, sound is just energy. It's energy. Actually, I'm talking to you right now, but how do you hear me? It's because I'm creating energy with my larynx and my mouth and the air that's coming out of my lungs. All those combine to create some energy that you can pick up, and you can distinguish the different sounds that I'm making. That's interesting to think about, isn't it? So it's the energy that you hear as sound. Next, we have echo. I'm sure you've had fun, right? Echoes are kind of interesting. They're fun to play with. And echo is a sound that is heard again, right? You hear it again and again and again. Okay, that's an echo after it has reflected off a surface. So, right, that's interesting because we're coming back to the sound wave. So energy traveling as a wave, it hits something, right? And it bounces off and it comes back. So let me just draw arrows showing the direction of the movement, right? So first, this is you. I'm not a very good artist, right? And you're screaming, ah! Right? And the sound, the energy goes like this. It bounces off an object and comes back to your ear. That's an echo. So if you're in the mountains, and there are many cliffs, right? You can say, hello. You hear, hello, hello, hello. That's the echo that is coming back to you. We call that phenomenon an echo. Okay. Vibrate. Vibrate means that an object moves back and forth quickly. You know, it could have a slow vibration, but usually vibrations happen very quickly. For an object to move quickly, fast, backward and forward, or up and down too. It can also have that kind of motion. So for an object to move quickly backward and forward or up and down, it's just moving like this. That means vibrate. And vibrate is a verb. Vibration is a noun. Vibration. So we'll talk about that, of course, in the reading. And it's important to know that word because we're talking about how do you hear sound. We'll come back to vibrate. Okay, next. Tap. Tap is a type of hitting something. Actually, it's in the definition right here, to hit. Hit, when one object collides or comes in contact with another object, that is to hit. Now, hit, there are many kinds of hits, right? And we have many words in English to describe different types of hits. But a tap is a certain type of hit. It means to hit something quickly and lightly. So think about this. You are walking and it's very crowded at your school. You're walking down the hallway and two people are walking. They bump into each other. Bump is another type of hit. But bump is kind of like tap. Tap it. But we don't say I tapped into you. You'd say I bumped into you. But if you use your hand, right, on the wall and you just hit it lightly, like you bump into somebody, not hard, not with a lot of energy, you just tap it, right? That's tap. Now, if you hit it, right, you punch it. Punch is another type of hit. Punch is stronger, more energy. Punch. Right? So like I said, there's many types of words that we use for hit, different situations. Tap just means that you tap something lightly and quickly. Probably when you go to somebody's door, you don't punch the door to get their attention. You tap on it, right? Tap, tap, tap. Knock, 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 right? To get their attention. Don't punch the door. You'll hurt your hand and you'll confuse the person inside. What's going on? Okay? So tap. Okay. Brain. Important word, right? We need our brains. Of course, everybody has a brain. I hope your brain is working well. Of course, it's working well. Okay? The brain is the thing inside your head, the organ inside your head. It's a thing, yes, but it's an organ too. Maybe we should say organ. Your body has many different organs, and these different organs serve different functions. The brain is a very complex, very complicated organ. It has many different parts, and it works. Scientists still don't fully understand how the brain works, how it grows, how it develops. It's a very, very mysterious but interesting and challenging to study organ in your body that does a specific thing. What does it do? It controls your body. That's one of the things that it does. It controls the motion of your body. It controls your breathing. It controls many functions of your body that you need to live, but you also use your brain to think and to read and to imagine, right? So the brain, like I said, is a very complex organ that does many, many different things, okay? But it also is very important when we're talking about sound. Next, we have eardrum. Did you know you have a drum inside your ear? Yes, there is. Okay? The eardrum is the thing in your ear that vibrates, right? Just like the top of a drum. If you have a drum at home, or you've seen drums before, or maybe you play a drum at school, a drum is like a a box, like a circular box, and it has a thin skin of something on top. It's stretched very tight, and if you tap it, it makes a sound. Well, that skin or that fabric or whatever it is, that's also inside your ear, both your ears. And when sound hits it, it vibrates. And that vibration is what your brain picks up. And your brain interprets that vibration as sound. And that's how you are understanding what I'm saying right now. So eardrum. It's very important. Our eardrums can be fragile. So be careful about listening to very loud sounds, very big sounds, because your eardrum can actually be damaged. So be careful. Don't listen to music that's very loud. Be careful around very loud sounds. Sometimes you might want to wear protection for your ears to protect your eardrums. Next, we have clap. If you've gone to a movie or usually a play, or there's a live event in front of you, some people are playing music, or maybe even just reading a poem. Somebody does something that you like, you hit your hands together. You don't tap your hands, that's odd. You hit your hands together and you make a sound. Yay! That's to clap. And if many people do it together, that means that everybody is showing their appreciation. Good job. You've done a great job. Okay? So those are our words for the lesson.
Lesson 15. Sound waves. Sound wave. The energy that you hear as sound. Echo. A sound that is heard again after it has reflected off a surface. Vibrate. For an object to move quickly, backward and forward. Tap. To hit something quickly and lightly. Brain. The thing inside your head that controls your body. Eardrum. The thing in your ear that vibrates and lets you hear. Clap. To hit your hands together and make a sound.